Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something pretty interesting today. A place called Ravenwood Manor.
Ravenwood Manor.
Yeah, it's supposedly this haunted location.
Okay.
And the thing is, we actually have two different sources on it.
Tells me.
One that plays it up like super spooky, and another one that's well, more on the humorous side.
So two very different perspectives on the same place.
Right. And since you love all things paranormal, we figured this would be perfect for a deep dive.
Sounds intriguing. Where do we start?
Well, let's jump into that first source. It's called The Mystery of Ravenwood Manor.
Okay. The Mystery of Ravenwood Manor.
And right off the bat, it sets the scene like classic haunted house stuff, abandoned mansion fog rolling in.
Oh, I can picture it now.
And of course, creaky doors everywhere.
Can't have those creaky doors.
Exactly. So this story follows a guy named Ethan who's, he's a total skeptic.
A skeptic.
Yeah, he doesn't believe in any of the ghost stuff, and he actually bets he can spend an hour inside the manor without getting spooked.
So he's going in there looking for a challenge.
Yeah, pretty much. But the house, it has other plans.
Oh, I bet it does. What happens?
Well, at first it's just subtle things. You know, that feeling of being watched a cold draft, even though there's no wind.
Classic techniques to build tension, make the reader feel uneasy.
Right. And then there's this whisper.
A whisper? Spooky?
Yeah, it just says, leave now.
Oh, wow.
But of course, Ethan just brushes it off, thinks it's a prank.
I mean, in that situation, who wouldn't, right?
Exactly. But then things get, weirder.
Weirder how?
There's this scene with a mirror, and instead of seeing his own reflection, Ethan sees this man in an old suit.
In the mirror.
And the man warns him to get out.
Mirrors in horror stories always creep me out.
Right? They're like a portal to something else.
Exactly. And that distortion, it plays on our fear of the unknown. Like,
Yeah.
what if something else is looking back at us?
Totally unsettling.
Yeah.
And of course, just to make things worse, the door slams shut, trapping Ethan inside.
No way.
Yeah, he totally freaks out, scrambling to get out. And as he's escaping, he sees that shadowy figure watching him from the window.
The man in the mirror.
Yeah, but then it vanishes.
Wow. So classic ghost story elements.
Right, it plays on all those primal fears. But it makes you wonder how much of it was real and how much was just Ethan's imagination, in that heightened state of fear.
That's a good point, especially when we consider the second source, The Misadventure of Ravenwood Manor, which takes a very different approach.
Oh yeah, this one's hilarious. It's about another skeptic named George, but he goes into the whole thing with a sense of humor.
Oh, that's interesting. And so instead of being scared, he's making jokes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's got a ghost detecting app, and he's constantly cracking wise about the whole situation.
That's a fun twist, using humor to debunk the typical haunted house tropes.
It totally flips the script. Like, even the creaking door becomes a source of amusement.
It makes you think maybe we do see what we want to see in these spooky situations.
Right. Our expectations can really shape our experiences. And then there's this scene where George mistakes a cat for a ghost.
A chat.
Yeah, it's pure comedic gold.
I can imagine. But even with the humor, the story still builds to a climax, right?
Oh, yeah, George tries to take a selfie with the ghost.
It's a ghost selfie.
Yep, but it backfires spectacularly.
Right.
It's actually really funny. And then there's the ending.
What happened?
They find a tray of muffins and a note.
Muffins from a ghost.
That's the implication. It's like a friendly, welcoming gesture.
Wow, what a twist.
It's so unexpected, it turns the whole haunted house idea on its head.
It's like the story is saying, hey, maybe ghosts aren't so bad after all, especially if they bake.
Exactly. So here we have these two totally different takes on Ravenwood Manor.
One that's all about chills and the other that's just pure fun.
Yeah, it really shows how perspective can shape a story.
And how our expectations going in can influence what we experience.
Now, what's really interesting to me is how these two stories kind of reflect our, modern relationship with the supernatural.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. You know, that first story with the shadowy figures and whispers, it feels very much like a classic ghost story.
Right. Like drawing on those traditional fears.
Exactly. Like the fear of darkness and what might be hiding in it. It's a fear that's been around for centuries.
Yeah. You see it in all those old myths and legends.
For sure. But then the second story, with the ghosted taking app and all the jokes, it feels very current.
It does, doesn't it?
Like it's acknowledging that modern skepticism, but also leaving room for something beyond what we can explain.
And that cheap electrical work bit?
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Right. It's like debunking the supernatural, but also admitting that weird stuff does happen.
It really does. And that's what I love about these two sources. They're so different, but both kind of appealing.
Yeah.
I got to say, I'm drawn to the idea of friendly muffin baking ghosts.
Really. I mean, they sound nice,
Right.
but wouldn't a real ghostly encounter be more, memorable, even if it was scary?
Hmm. I guess you have a point there. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to believe in something truly unexplained.
It's that balance, isn't it? Wanting to believe, but also needing proof.
Exactly. And these Ravenwood Manor stories, they capture that perfectly.
They show how our own personalities and experiences can shape how we see the unknown.
They really do. But what do they tell us about Ravenwood Manor itself?
Yeah, is it actually scary? Or just a quirky old house? Maybe a bit of both.
It's like the house is a blank canvas,
Yeah.
The stories define it more than anything else.
And that's what makes it so interesting. It becomes this symbol for our fascination with the paranormal.
We project our own ideas onto fears, hopes, all of it.
So we have these personal accounts, but what about the history of the place?
Yeah, there's not much about that in either story, is there?
It's almost like the manor wants to be known for its stories more than its facts.
And that says a lot about the power of a good story.
He does.
Yeah.
It brings a place to life, makes it more than just bricks and mortar.
So even without knowing the history, we still get a sense of Ravenwood Manor through the people who went there.
And isn't that how we often connect with the unknown? Through the stories and legends.
It is. Which brings us back to you, the listener. Would you be brave enough to check out Ravenwood Manor, hoping for spooky chills like Ethan, or maybe a friendly welcome like George, with some muffins, of course?
That is the question, isn't it? What is it about these mysterious places that draws us in? Is it the thrill of being scared? You know, testing our courage against the unknown?
It's a good question. Or maybe it's something deeper, a need to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
I think it's probably a bit of both, right? That excitement of not knowing what to expect, the possibility of seeing something incredible.
And that desire to believe in something magical or even a little spoopy.
Exactly. And Ravenwood Manor, with those two very different stories, it kind of offers both, doesn't it? A place where you might face your fears or find something comforting.
It really does. And that's what makes it so much more than just an old abandoned house. It becomes this reflection of our own feelings about the unknown.
Our hopes and anxieties all wrapped up in one place.
And the fact that we don't really know much about the actual history of the manor, it just adds to the whole thing.
It lets our imaginations run wild.
It does. It's like
Yeah.
Ravenwood Manor is this blank slate just waiting for us to fill in the blanks with our own stories.
Whether it's a haunted house or a haven for friendly ghosts, it's our own perception that shapes the experience.
That's so true. And I think that's a powerful reminder that even in our modern world, with all the technology and facts and stuff, there's still room for mystery.
For things we can't explain.
Oh.
For those things that give us chills, but in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Ravenwood Manor, I think the biggest takeaway is just to keep an open mind.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, there's always something to be learned from these stories.
They remind us that there are still places in this world that make us wonder, that spark our imaginations, and make us realize how much we don't know.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll have your own Ravenwood Manor experience.
You might stumble upon a place with its own legends and stories, and you'll have to decide for yourself what to believe.
Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, never lose that sense of wonder.
Beautifully said. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ravenwood Manor, and until next time, keep seeking out those hidden corners of the world where the extraordinary might just be waiting.